Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. I so love it when there's people waiting in the wings to jump on when we come on live. Thank you so much for those of you that are already jumping on. We appreciate you. And we appreciate the support for the Her Version community. Remember, this platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Rachel Burns. Rachel has always had a strong desire to understand happiness and what helps us as humans to continually move away from suffering and live the most fulfilling and joyful life possible. This stemmed from her journey of internal turmoil, having experienced the mental imprisonment of anorexia and depression. Her story is filled with challenges that she had to overcome in order to find her authentic self. Rachel is passionate about eating clean, yoga, and overall wellness for humanity. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Sabrina. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little bit and sharing your story in our community. We so appreciate women like yourself who are open to speaking about some of their story or all of their story and sharing it with others, because I think that this is how we are going to evolve as females, to help pull each other up, to let each other know that, hey, I also did that and I made it out alive and this is how I did it.
Definitely.
How you doing on this Wednesday?
Yeah, brilliant. And in fact, I'd like to open with gratitude for you having this platform for the sharing of these stories.
Thank you.
And allowing us, I think part of the healing process, a huge part of it, is as we share our story, some of the pain inside is also released. It takes some of the power away from what has been suppressed when we allow ourselves to share some of the things that maybe we're most afraid of about ourselves.
Yes, 100%.
Thank you for giving up that possibility.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that. I want to say before we kind of jump in here, because I know people are going to be asking, where are you from? Your accent.
So I was born in the south of England, but I've lived abroad for so many years now that the accent's sort of a little bit mixed from traveling a lot. So I now live in Spain, in the south of Spain.
Well, I'm going to say I'm low-key slightly jealous of that. It's so pretty. I'm just like immediately attracted to you because of your voice. It's so gorgeous. I've tried, like, embarrassingly tried to fake like some sort of something. And you know how some people can do that? They can actually like pull off a pretty good whatever, anything. I can't do any of it. It's so awful. But I so appreciate speaking to people that have a little bit of something a little bit different than what I'm speaking with here. But listen, I would love to jump in. I would love to give you the floor for just a little bit, so you can kind of give us an overview of, some of your past, where you stemmed from, how you ended up where you are, and some of the challenges that you've been through, throughout your life, whatever you're comfortable with talking about. And then we'll kind of just flow from there. Is that cool?
Yes, of course.
Awesome.
Of course. So, to give a little overview, the issues around with food began when I was around 15. And I can actually remember the exact moment it began. It was when I saw a photo of myself. And now connecting the dots backwards, I realized that I had really low self-esteem. I was a very timid child. I wasn't proud of myself. I didn't really respect myself. I liked to hide away. I didn't like to be seen. But one thing I would hear a lot from people is, you're so lucky, you're so skinny. I would love to have a body like yours. And so I programmed into myself that people saw my value as being the weight that I was at. So I always was aware of the fact that I was one of the skinniest in the room. And at 15, when I realized that that wasn't the case anymore, I'd, got to a more normal weight, let's say, and I saw a photograph of myself, and all of a sudden it seemed like something so simple. But at that moment in teenage years, when we're building that perception of who we are in the world, it was like everything crumbled underneath me.
Wow.
Because the one thing that I based my value on, which was being the skinny one, was taken away. And so, because it's that moment in life I felt I had no control over anything, one thing I could control was my food intake.
Yeah.
And I could bring back that sense of self-worth by bringing my weight back down, and again, being the skinniest one in the room. And so for about a period of about a year, I ate less and less and less. And I tried to get away with eating as little as possible. And luckily, I was confronted after about a year. And because I saw the impact it was having on my family, I started to eat again. The issue is that often we don't realize that someone has a problem with food because it's not visible on the outside. They can be at a normal weight and they can be eating, but the turmoil, the inner turmoil is still there. And that was very much still there for me. Still low self-esteem, low sense of self-worth. And that then developed into depression. So I was about 19 when the worst part of it was. And I couldn't leave the house. I was struggling to get out of bed. I was in my second year at university and I was failing uni, and I'd always been a really good student. And it was feeding more and more into this perception that I was worthless. And I was acting in a way that just made me believe more and more that I was worthless. And there was this huge, it was like a light shining in the middle of the dark of this horrible place that I was in. My university, they sent me to Spain. And I was sent to a Spanish family to live with them for 3 months, and I was eating home-cooked food.
Yeah.
Being at uni, and especially somebody who's depressed, I was at home, I was eating processed stuff. Really, I was not putting good stuff into my body. And all of a sudden, I was living in this Spanish family. We were eating 3 proper meals, home-cooked meals a day of Mediterranean food, and it was literally night and day.
Wow. It's probably so good.
So good. So good. And that helped me to realize the massive impact that food has on our emotional well-being.
Wow.
Because it was a massive wake-up call. All of a sudden, it's as though it was a veil had been lifted, but also I felt like I was coming back to life. And it was just through changing food. Now, obviously, the low self-esteem was still there, but now I was in a physical place to be able to confront what it was that was getting in the way of my happiness. Now I had that sort of strength and that energy and that desire to actually face my fears and start the process of finding what would make me happy. So that was like my first aha moment. And the second was, my father's always practiced yoga. I've always seen him doing his yoga sessions. And so one day I picked up his yoga books. I was 19, and I just started to ask questions. Why am I not happy? What am I doing? And what can I start to do to find happiness and to find answers? What's causing me to feel this way? And just sort of allow myself to go into those places and find out what it was.
That's so cool that your dad was doing yoga. What a cool dad.
I know. I've got a cool dad. Cool mom and dad. Yeah.
That's not very, that's the percentage in that's pretty low. That's awesome. Good for you. Yeah. I want to ask about the food though. Is this you looking back now realize, or are you actually conscious at that point of the food?
Ooh, that's hard to tell. I think it was a gradual realization through going back and forth between a good diet and a poor diet. I think it's quite normal in the student years to fluctuate between the right foods and the wrong foods, let's say. And so a gradual realization of the massive impact it had on everything, like my energy. I noticed that it exacerbated the depression when I was eating a poor diet.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That is so cool. When do you think, how many years later did you start to make actual changes? Like in the food that you were actually eating just regularly in your day?
Good question. It was once I came back so my university then sent me to Italy. I studied languages at uni. I then went to Italy, and it was just the diet of the surroundings I was in was a lot more Mediterranean. And so I was blessed with that being a more well-rounded nutrition. And then my final year at university, I made a massive decision to show up for myself. I decided I am going to do what it takes to feel good. And there was a huge shift at that point in my life where I actually I started to become proud of who I was and what I was doing. And I started to actually feel good about who I was. And so it was all kind of feeding into itself. You know, we've got these two areas in our lives we can feed into. It's the victim mindset or the growth mindset. And that's when I made the conscious choice to feed into the growth mindset.
That's awesome. Yeah. When you said that the impact on your family from not eating very much, what was the impact? What was happening in the family dynamic? Were they talking to you? Were they like going on long walks with you and bringing it up? How was it? Were they crying?
Yeah, so I guess especially when it's a traumatic part in a person's life, I don't have very vivid memories of a lot of that period. I've just sort of got moments that really had an emotional impact on me that stuck with me.
Yeah.
And it was a conversation with my parents, and I could see how much it was affecting them, especially my mum. I could see how it was affecting her well-being, that I was doing that to myself. And that for me was important enough to say, okay, this has to change.
Wow.
So yeah, I do have a very vivid memory of that conversation.
No kidding. So your mom sat down with you and was like, hey, like calmly sat down with you.
There was definitely emotions there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Because I think a lot of times parents have a hard time with that. Not really knowing, unsure. They don't know what, do you go right in? Do you ignore? Do you just go to the doctor? Like how to approach that. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I've never had that conversation with my parents to ask them what it was like for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. You just sparked interest to have that conversation, to sit down. Yeah.
Yeah. I think eating disorders is massively more rampant than we think it is within humans, because it's kind of invisible, like you said. I think that a lot of people are doing it. It doesn't even matter how much you weigh. Doesn't mean that you're skinny just because you're, doing stuff like that. So I think that it's great that you're talking about it and being honest about it. I'd love to talk to you about challenges. Throughout your life, you've been through a journey. You are where you are now. Looking back, what do you think is the greatest challenge that you've had? And what did you learn from it?
Another great question. I have to say, I think rather than it being one specific challenge, there's been many medium challenges along the way. And possibly the hardest one has been owning my own story and telling my story to the world. and not being afraid to say, this is what I was going through, or I am going through, and being okay with being fully seen. Not the bits that people, that I want to let people see, but just allowing people to see me as I am and being authentic. It was the biggest challenge, but the most liberating experience of all. As I learned through it, that the moment that we are fully authentic, we then allow the people who come into contact with us to not have to adjust who they are so that we feel comfortable around them. And I realized that through not being authentic, it was also making the people around me feel that they had to adjust who they were so that I was comfortable.
Wow.
And so by being authentic, we allow everybody who comes into contact with us to know it's okay if you've got a bad day. If you're having a bad day, it's okay if you've got challenges with X, Y, Z. It's okay to be human.
Yeah.
You don't have to show your highlight reel. It's okay to also have bad days.
Yeah. How old were you when you came to that realization? The importance of being authentic.
Ooh, I think that's also been a gradual one.
Okay. When did it start? How old were you when you first came to Bay?
That's more recent. Through yogic practices and different workshops, the facing up to things that made me really uncomfortable. So one of them was eye contact. And we had to be in a session where we had to sit for 2 minutes and gaze into somebody's eyes. And it was the most uncomfortable 2 minutes of my life.
What emotions came up? Did any emotions come up?
I was crying. Yeah, I was, because it was allowing myself to be seen.
Yeah.
And being uncomfortable there and sitting with that. After that workshop, it was a full weekend. After that weekend, I was flying, I was soaring, because I'd faced something that scared me so much, and I'd allow myself to be there, and I'd come out the other side. Yeah. And there was this sense of pride in self and just having let go of something that had constrained me from being fully happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I highly recommend the eye contact one to anybody who comes across that in their world, as far as doing that as an exercise, because 100% an impact. I still remember, I've done it twice, and I still remember like the people, like vividly what they look like and the emotions that were pouring out. That's awesome.
So was yours a recent experience?
30. I'm about to be 40. I turned 40 in August, and I went to the Landmark Forum. That was my first one. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's a class. That was the first one. It was with a man who was probably like 15 years my senior, and we stared at each other standing. Was yours standing or sitting?
Sitting.
Sitting. See, I've done it sitting too. It's easier to do it sitting. Standing is so, it's almost like being naked. Because when you're sitting, you can kind of like hold your hands in your lap, or you're more like, at least for me, not trying to project, but like, I was like close to my body. So like I was with myself. Standing, we had to have our hands by our sides. And I just literally, I was so, might have been because it was the first time I've ever done it too. So maybe that's why it was so much more impactful. But for me, the sitting one was less, but it was also my second time doing it. And it was also with a female.
Okay.
But that was during yoga. It was some sort of a yoga retreat that I went on. That's awesome. I love that. Very exciting. What's the importance of personal development in your life?
One of the huge lessons I've learned along the journey through overcoming depression and building self-esteem is that growth is happiness. And yes. I realized that one of the things that made me not believe in myself, made me not respect myself, and made me not be a person I could love, was the fact that I wasn't showing up. I wasn't growing, I wasn't evolving, I wasn't stepping outside of my comfort zone. So I was living in this place where I was uncomfortably comfortable, not really growing, and just kind of being there, you know, just sort of going through life.
Wait a minute. Uncomfortably comfortable. Yeah. Explain to, I think I know what that means, but can you explain what that means to you? That's good.
So choosing the easy path.
Okay.
May feel like it's the easy route, but in reality, we as humans need to feel that our life has purpose. And so when we're living our day to day without this sense of purpose and growth and giving to something beyond ourselves, we're in this place where we're uncomfortable to the point there's something missing. There's like a joie de vivre that's not in our lives that we seek to feed with something else. And so I work with people who are going through rehab, who are, you know, overcoming eating disorders. And often we can turn to something outside of ourselves to give us that joy that when our life has purpose, so we're growing, we find from within. You know, it's this like the feeling that we get after facing up to something that scares us. Like for me, the eye contact, the high that we get after is way beyond any high that we can get from, you know, consuming alcohol or sugar or substances or being in a toxic relationship or restricting food intake. That high is building a relationship with ourselves. It's saying, yes, I did that. I'm proud of me. I'm growing. And so that uncomfortably comfortable place is staying where we are, not growing, and then needing something else to give us the love and the joy that we just don't have in our lives.
Absolutely. We have somebody that said, please mention self-love. What do you think that means?
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful question. And it's one that comes up a lot. And my understanding of self-love, often when we say self-love, it can be misinterpreted as being something fluffy, or that we're looking in the mirror and saying that, you know, repeating affirmations, like saying, I love you, you're beautiful, you know, I see something I don't like, but I love you anyway. When in reality, my belief is that self-love is built on doing the things that are required to make us respect who we are and to be proud of what we do.
Absolutely.
And it's,
I love that you're saying fluffy. That is a great, like, was that an adverb for that? It is. It's, we view it as like relaxing, getting our nails done. Fluffy. That's great. Fun. Okay, so that's great. So what, because it repeated again, what is it to you, actually?
To me, it's about, to say it in other words, we often see the importance of building a relationship with the people around us. And we will invest time, energy, and effort into building a relationship with our partners, our friends, our family, our kids. And in reality, the most important relationship is the one we have with ourselves. Because we live from that. You know, how we relate to ourselves sets the tone for how we relate to everybody. And yet we don't dedicate the same time to saying, okay, if I don't love myself, what do I have to do to be a person I can love? Who do I have to be? How do I have to show up for myself? What does love mean to me? Do I look after my body? This is what I live in. This is my physical expression of myself. Do I look after it? Or do I treat it with disrespect? Do I speak to myself with awful words? What can I do about that? How can I show up for myself each day when I get up?
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that, to me, first, it's free. Because that's a big thing I get all the time, like self-love. And they're like, I don't have money to go get my nails done or go get a massage. I'm not financially capable of doing that. But what you're telling us here is mental. It's emotional. It's within. It's actually taking the time to figure ourselves out, meditate, sit on that, create a plan.
Yeah.
So
And allowing
good. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, allowing ourselves to be with ourselves for a period of time every day, however long that may be, so we can actually hear and feel what needs to be heard and felt.
Definitely. You know, one of the things that I come against often, and you may also, is, you know, linking up with a potential client or just somebody who's just needing some support, emotionally or mentally. And they're in a dark spot. They're in a dark place. They're in a struggle. They're in a challenge. They're understanding what you and I are talking about right now. You know, they understand, okay, personal development, I guess I can read a book. You know, they're understanding, they're conceptualizing that it could be something that could help them. The dilemma that I find often is just, what is the first step? What is the second step? What are the very first things that somebody should do when they're sitting down, like you're saying, they're doing the self-love, and they're like, okay, I'm going to do it. What do I do? What did your journey look like? What were your like 1, 2, 3 of going from like when you were in a challenge to stepping out of your challenge? What's some advice you can give us?
Yeah, this is a really good one. And this is how meditation can be so powerful. And meditation doesn't necessarily have to be sitting in lotus position and quietening the mind. Self-reflection and self-awareness is one of the first steps to even being able to know, where do I start? Actually giving space to step back and almost detach from our own personal experience and be able to look at it from an outside perspective and say, okay, what is going on here? What are the thoughts coming up on a consistent basis? What's happening in my life? And I mean, step one is the self-awareness, and I find step two is to start asking questions. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I can't remember who it was, and he was saying how we live our lives by asking ourselves questions all of the time. And this is how we understand reality. And we often don't even hear the questions we ask. And they have a huge impact on how our subconscious mind responds to the outside world. And just by beginning to consciously create the questions that we ask ourselves. So sitting down, like for me, my first question, I was in a job that made me miserable. I was really unhappy, and I could see I was going down the road to depression again. And so I sat with myself one day and I said, okay, when am I happy? Why am I happy in those moments? And how can I do more of that? And can I turn this into a career, into something I get to do all of the time, so that what I do as my job makes me happy? And that for me was a huge, huge shift in my life, because it was what I'd studied 5 years at university to become a linguist. And I was just a year out of uni, and bam, I went from being, going towards maybe being an interpreter or a translator to becoming a personal trainer. So it's, like a complete change in a moment when everyone would have said, that's ridiculous. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But the questions that I would say, okay, does it make me happy? No. If I continue down this path, is it going to make me happy? No. Okay, what am I going to do about it?
Wow.
And so the next step was taking action. You ask yourself the questions, you find the answer, take action. Even if it's scary, just taking action.
Yes, asking questions. I love that. And I love the question, what makes me happy? It's so simple. And then how do I get more of that? That's brilliant. That was only 2 steps though. Do you have another one?
Yeah, so the self-awareness, the asking the questions, and then the third one would be the taking action.
Taking action. Okay, yeah. Okay, so you did say it. Take action.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've seen in your life as well, haven't you, that it can be very scary to do something we've never done.
Yeah.
And sometimes that fear can hold us back until we get to a place where we're like, okay, I'm done. I have to take action. Now there's no other choice. I'm doing it anyway, even though it's really scary.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That just gave me the chills. What's holding me back? Something. That totally gave me the chills. That was cool. What's the number one lesson you've learned from your life?
Oh, it's a two parts, two things within the lesson.
Okay.
To let go of needing things to be perfect.
Yes.
But within that, it is realizing that to learn to do anything, we've got to start with the first step. And one of the powerful things about being in the fitness industry is that what we do in fitness and what we do in yoga can translate into the everyday life. And I've learned so much from working with myself and working with my clients in that environment. Because what we learn when we're learning to do a plank, or we're learning to do a squat, or we're learning to do a yoga pose is you don't go straight in without a warm up and go straight into lifting the heaviest weight or doing the most advanced yoga pose. You allow yourself to learn the steps that take you towards that. And it's a gradual journey of showing up every day and just doing a little bit, and it's consistency. And so we have this vision of, maybe a really challenging pose, thinking, oh, I'll never be able to do that. But the reality is that it's just about building up little by little. And it's the tiny little choices we make every day that will have a profound effect and make exponential growth happen in the long run.
Yes, absolutely. Can you say the first part again?
Ooh.
Well, it was so good. I want to write it down. It was, okay, so number one lesson you've learned
is to allow myself to stop needing it to be perfect.
Perfect. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop allowing perfection. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think if we like, this is one of the things that's so magical in yoga, reconnecting with that childlike curiosity. So allowing ourselves to be the child again. And you remember when you were a kid and you were learning to do something, let's say you wanted to learn to do a cartwheel. You didn't go in and think, if I can't do a perfect cartwheel the first time, then I'm an absolute failure. And like, what's the point? And, oh, I just can't do life. As kids, we just kept going and going. And we like looked at our friends, we're like, show me, how do you do it? How do you do it? And we'd learn and we'd ask questions.
Yes.
We lose that when we're adults.
Yes, 100%. That the vigor for life, it kind of disappears a little bit as we get older. Yeah. 100%. But yeah, if we were to grab our inner child every once in a while and allow ourselves to do that, it'd be beautiful. 100%. What else? I feel like there's something else.
Yes. I mean, going deeper into the childlike curiosity is, and this is because I love to follow inspirational speakers and mentors and listening to podcasts every day, and something that comes up with quite a few of them. Tom Bilyeu is one of them in particular that I really love to follow, and he talks about being the student, always being the student of life. And how it doesn't matter if you can't do something now. Just because you can't do it now doesn't mean you can't learn to do it.
Yes.
And, in what I do with clients, it's about learning to love ourselves. Just because you don't love yourself now, or just because you don't respect yourself now, doesn't mean you can't learn to.
Yes.
Once we realize it's a skill and that we can learn anything if it's important enough to us, and we break it down like a kid would, and we try and we fall down, we try and we fall down, and we do it until it gets easier and it gets easier, and then it starts to get fun. Yeah, forever the student.
That's so true. My story, it comes from abuse. And when I first exited that, Just the thought of thinking that I was beautiful, or I am powerful, or I am awesome, just the thought would bring me to tears because I didn't believe it. And it took so much time and patience to be able to allow myself to say those things out loud, believe those things, and I want to say it out loud, but like say it out loud in public. That was heavy. But it's like you said, it's doing it consistently, being patient, and we're going to mess up. It's not going to be perfect. You just have to keep doing it again and again and again until you start believing yourself.
So what was it that gave you the strength? Because obviously when we're doing that profounder journey of shifting how we relate to ourselves, we come up across emotional hurdles.
Yeah.
So what was it that gave you the strength to get through those hurdles and keep going?
I didn't want to be stuck in that anymore. And I had other people in my life that were telling me that I was smart and that I was beautiful. And I thought that it was silly that I could hear that from somebody else, but I couldn't hear my own voice say it. That's heavy, you know? So I practice, and you could ask my fiance, I practice often. And he'll say stuff to me and I'll be like, that's because I'm awesome. Or that's because I know everything. Or, that's because I'm brilliant. And, when we first started hanging out, he was kind of like, girl, you got to check your ego a little bit right there. But but once I explained to him that the world that I had come from was so dark and the esteem that I had was so low, that these were exercises that I had to do for myself, for my own inner soul. Once he understood the concept of it, he's a little more gracious now when I say it. But I honestly, I just said it yesterday that I was brilliant. I probably do it daily. I give myself an out loud affirmation in the world. Sometimes I say it at the store and he's kind of like, do we have to do that at the store? But, but girl, listen, we only live once. We're here one time and we have to rise. We have to rise in all of the areas. We have to, because nobody else is going to do it for us. Nobody can get my esteem to where I want it to be. Only I can do that. So I can either work on it or I can die trying, or I can stay in victimhood. And I don't want to stay in victimhood. I already did that. It sucks. Super sucky. Doesn't feel good at all.
And when you do those things in public, there may be another woman close to you who hears you say that. The seed that you plant in her mind.
Yes.
Say, I want to feel more like she does. What do I need to do to get to that place?
Yes.
And we then allow the people who see that, if they don't have it in their lives, to know that it's possible.
Yes. Yeah. And what it does is it causes us to rise, because if I'm consistently telling myself I'm brilliant, I better make sure that I'm really freaking smart. So it's telling myself like, hey, I have to continue to learn. I have to continue to pull. I have to continue to speak to women like you who can give me nuggets of life that I can add to my toolbox, because that has become my identity now. So it puts pressure on myself to rise to that level, So why not? I want to talk a little bit about limiting beliefs, because I think it's an issue that we all have that we don't really talk about very much, because they're subtle and they've been given to us the whole time we've been alive. We don't even necessarily know it. Have you had any limiting beliefs that you can think of off the top of your head?
Oh yes.
What's a big one?
So I can even remember the date when I had this insight into my own psyche. It was 2012, summertime 2012. And I've always had a tendency to do autotherapy, let's say. So to sit down and have conversations with myself. You know, to do the asking questions, to start unraveling things, to understand self a little bit more. And in one of these personal therapy sessions, this realization came up that up until that point in my life, I had been living my life through the perceived perceptions of the people around me. So I was projecting onto people what I thought that they thought about me.
Yeah.
And then I was adjusting how I was in accordance to what I thought they were thinking.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Yes, that's what people do. What a great realization.
It is when we do it, I see it a lot, and I certainly saw it in my own journey.
Yes.
That we can adjust ourselves to the temperature of the room that we walk into. And so in doing so, we dim our light so as not to outshine, so as to fit in, and not to make other people feel uncomfortable. But in doing that, we're not being authentic.
Yeah.
We're hiding parts of ourselves so that we can adjust to what we think people are thinking of us, when we have no idea what other people are thinking.
Yeah.
And then we say, no, you're not good enough to be like that in this situation. Just tone it down a little bit.
Yes. What do you do now?
One huge thing is connecting with a community that also practices these things.
Beautiful.
Gives even more space to be more and more authentic. I love going to ecstatic dances. Have you heard of ecstatic dances?
No, but I think I've seen it. Tell me what it is. I think I've seen it on social media.
It's a space where no alcohol or substances are permitted. So you go in, you've got your bottle of water and you've got your comfortable clothing. Music is put on, and you just allow yourself, often eyes closed, to feel and express through movement. And there's something so liberating. You're no longer dancing to be seen, dancing to be like anyone else. It's just the body and how we move our bodies has a huge impact on how we feel. And you know, you think of a confident person, how they stand, you think of a timid person, how they stand. So when we're in an environment where we just get to move in whatever way feels natural, stuff comes up. We start to get to understand things about ourselves maybe we didn't know before, and to find more freedom, and to be seen in ways that we haven't been seen before.
Where is this done at?
Here in the south coast of Spain, well, across Spain itself, there's a lot of ecstatic dances. Ibiza's got,
are they at clubs or are they at like studios?
Oh, sometimes they'll be in the middle of a park. A friend of mine does this amazing festival called On Base, and she does it in Oxford, and I think she's taking it to other places. And they've got lots, they'll be in a park, and they'll have these huge ecstatic dances.
And they just play music, and you just dance. What's so crazy about this? To answer your question, no, I have not heard of this. But what's so interesting is probably for 15 years now, I have had this thought in my head of exactly that. So no drugs, no alcohol, juice and water only, like green juices. And it was going to be called So I guess somebody could steal this. But it was going to be called, which it's already existing. So it was going to be called Zero. And the reason it was going to be called Zero is to stand for like, you go in with zero, like there's zero excuses. You don't have to follow a routine. There's no like weightlifting. It's just your body and you movement. And it's easy, and you just go with the flow, and there's no extras. You don't have to get dressed up. You don't have to have special clothes. You don't have to get dazzled. You just come as you are, zero excuses, and just dance your ass off. So that is so cool. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah.
How long have you been involved in that?
Well, my first realization, the one I told you about with the eye contact, was through a similar practice called primal dance, that I believe was born in Argentina. And this is a little bit more guided. So I started that 6 years ago.
Wow.
And being able to combine the self-awareness practice and the meditative practice of yoga and that freedom that you get within those environments, and then take that freedom into a yoga practice or a fitness session, it changed the way that I exercised and how I related to my body. It's something so simple and, again, free, like you were saying. It's completely free. Well, maybe you pay the entrance for the event, but it's worth it.
Yeah. That's great. I want to take a moment really fast to acknowledge our listeners. Those of you that are here live, we so appreciate you being here, supporting us. For those of you that are watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you are so that we know that you are here and you are listening, and we can send you some love. Rachel, I would love for you to tell us what you do. I mean, obviously, you've got a background here in so many different avenues. Can you explain to us, what your business is, how you help all the humans?
Yeah. I mean, there is so many ways to get to know ourselves. And I found that there is such a powerful connection between when we're training our mind and when we're training our body. And having been through the process of healing a relationship with my body and with myself through the modalities of yoga and meditation and fitness training and mind training, I just decided to begin to share what helped me heal with the world. And I've actually got a free event coming up next week, and it's all about these practices. It's basically how to go from where we are right now, wherever that is physically, emotionally, and taking that first step forwards. And it's all about building a loving relationship with ourselves, feeling at peace with the body, and of course, feeling at peace with food. It's something in the fitness industry I see a lot. And you actually mentioned this earlier, that eating disorders or just challenges with food, fear and guilt around food, or challenging emotions around food is present for so many people. And life doesn't have to be that way. We can be at peace. We can find peace with the food that we eat. We can find peace with the body that we live in, as we're creating an empowering mindset and building a life with purpose and meaning. Yeah. So, yeah. I do courses all around how to make that a reality, all online. So
That's great. I have your website above your head right here. Is that where they can go to find all this juicy information?
Probably the best avenue is through the Facebook group, because you get to see the videos, you get to participate in the free events. If I go on a Facebook Live, to do some morning motivation, then they'll actually get to listen into that. Right, whereas the website's a little bit more static. So
yes. Yeah. So what's the Facebook group?
The Facebook group is called Train Your Trinity with Rachel Jonas.
Oh, I love that. What does Trinity mean?
And so in yoga, we talk about the union of the body, the mind, and the soul.
Okay.
And in the courses, we focus on the union of those three and how to bring them all together. So the training of the mind to create the empowering mindset, the optimizing of the physical health, whilst creating the soul's purpose in this lifetime.
Yes. Oh, good name. I always love hearing when people name their groups. That's fantastic. I love it. What does success mean to you?
Success feels like being at peace with the good and the bad moments in life. When we learn a growth mindset that is also based on a love vibration. So a growth mindset that allows love in. Is one thing is we can create a growth mindset, but also allowing love in as we're doing that. So that when we're growing and everything's going great, fantastic. And then when things are challenging, stuff comes up, life may throw something at us, that we have the ability to say, okay, now what?
Yeah.
What do I do with this? How can I learn? How can I grow? How can I show up as the best version of myself right now so that when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'll be proud of what I did. And I will know I honored my needs and I showed myself love, even if it was hard.
Yeah.
And then,
I like that as far as waking up in the morning and being proud. That's good. I can imagine that versus the opposite, you know. And sometimes we get caught up in stuff like that where we wake up in the morning and we're not proud of what we did. So I can totally appreciate that. I'd love to speak to women right now who are listening now or on the replay, who are in the middle of a struggle or in the middle of a challenge, and they're trying to find their real self. You know, you were talking about earlier in our podcast, you know, finding your authentic self and being vulnerable and speaking your story and your truth. What would you say to females right now listening who are struggling with finding their authentic self?
one of the experiences that comes about from having a regular mind training practice, be that meditation or something else, is the ever-growing realization that we are not our beliefs, we are not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we're not even who we perceive ourselves to be. And we can get really stuck in the experience of being our beliefs, of being our perception of self, and think that there's no way out. And once we realize that it's programs that we've learned from maybe even prior to birth, but mainly from the day that we were born, we learn programs. So we understand who we are through the programs that have been, you know, through our life experiences. And once we understand it's a program, so your thought is not you, your belief is not you, the fear is not you. It's a program that you learned. So that means that we can learn new programs. We can learn a program where we honor who we are, we love who we are, we face our fears. And yes, it's scary. And it's just about taking that first step. Whatever that first step is for you, is just saying, okay, today I'm going to show up for me. How do I do that?
And thinking about how long it's taken us to learn the programs that we know so far. So it takes time. And a lot of times we have to unprogram and then reprogram those limiting thoughts that you and I were talking about earlier. We have to unlearn or unprogram those limiting beliefs that we have, and then reprogram some good stuff. I agree.
Yeah. And one thing that came up when you said that, I participate in a few support groups for people with eating disorders. And when we come to a certain point in our lives, we can get so stuck in the same loop and repeating the same thoughts and relating to food in the same way. And just by asking ourselves, what if I was to do the complete opposite? And just try that for a couple of days, what would happen? What if I was just to be a completely different version of myself just for a few days and see what happens, just trying it out a bit like a child again? Yeah.
I love that. So taking on like a new trait just for a day of like smiling at every person you meet.
Or, I mean, for me, it was, have you seen the series Vikings with Ragnar Lothbrok and Lagertha?
No, but I'm sure my fiance has. That's right up his alley. So tell me.
They're these really powerful characters. And I mean, the women, they're both this combination of feminine and strong.
Wow.
And so sometimes I would just visualize Lagertha and ask myself, what would Lagertha do? What would Lagertha do right now?
Yes. We have to have people in our, I love that you're saying that, because that is one of the things that actually got me to where I am now, which I'm still learning, right? Still pulling, still growing. But that is one of the things that I've done in my life, is having a what would so-and-so do in my life at all. And it's changed, it's altered. It goes back and forth sometimes, but it's always good to have a role model who you're modeling after in order to continue to rise. That's great. I'll have to look that up. What's her name? Lagertha?
Lagertha, yes.
I'm just imagining like just some crazy costumes right now. Like the dress attire. This is what it's in my head. I don't know. Like dresses. I don't know. And I'm assuming it's back in the Viking era, right?
Yeah,
with the
big strong hair, and I mean, this is where this came from, the slightly shaved hair.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love it now even more than I knew when I first saw it. That's cool. Lagertha. Well, I'll be doing a Google search on that one when we get off. So, girl, I so appreciate you being here. I so appreciate you hanging out with us and sharing some of your journey. Do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Just to know that sometimes it can be really challenging. We might be having a bad day, but just remembering that everything is temporary and nothing is permanent.
That's the best. That's the best. That's great. Well, thank you so much. For those of you watching live and still with us here, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate the love and support. For those of you watching on the replay, again, make sure you send us some love with a hashtag replay so we know that you were here and hanging out with us. I want to thank you so much for being here on the Her Version podcast. This community is expanding every single day, and it's filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like and share. If you have a story to share, make sure you reach out to me or at the heraversion.life website. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform with Rachel today that allows people to share their truth and inspire others. Until next time, do something